Welcome to January's podcast, my podcast. Today, I have a very, very special guest, someone I connected with a long time ago on Instagram, and then we lost touch and then got back in touch again recently, and now I can't get enough of her. Jen, Resurrektion of Me on Instagram. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's so nice to see your face.
Yeah. Isn't it nice to see our faces, our expressions, our tone? You'll see I talk with my hands a lot, that kind of thing. All right. So for those that are listening that are not familiar with you or your story, could you please give them a little bit background and what you're about?
Sure. Well, my name is Jen, and I'm in recovery from many things, but I'm in mainly, addiction recovery since May 1st, 2011. I'm also I'm also a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, cult abuse, and I have a mother wound the size of my entire heart. So, yeah, we have lots of healing work over here.
Lots of healing.
I have two children. I have a 7-year-old turning 7 tomorrow, boy, and I have a 2.5-year-old daughter. Yeah, and I live in Southern California, and I'm just about, just letting people feel what they feel and processing a lot of grief and a lot of trauma. I'm all about harm reduction and loving people where they're at in all aspects. That's kind of my jam. And women, celebrating women.
Yeah, as much as possible.
As much as possible,
Yeah, you actually do what do you call it on Fridays?
I do Fierce Female Friday.
Yes.
I started it last year where I feature one woman a week. That's just in all arenas. It tends to be a lot of sober women, but there's also been, therapists and coaches and just people that are standing tall in any arena and showing us how, we have the power to heal our lives and giving us all voices and a box to stand on. I just think it's so important. Women, tend to compete a lot. And I feel like it's not even that there's room for all of us. It's that we're all needed.
Yeah.
Each and every one of us,
I love that. When I first started Birth Out Fear 10 years ago, there was really nothing like it at the time. And so, it inspired a lot of people. And at first I was I was 31 instead of 41. So I've changed a lot. But at the time, my ego was in the driver's seat. And I was like, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're copying me. I was so petty. And now I'm the more the merrier. We need as many voices as we can get. Please, do what I'm doing, but do it as you use your voice, make it better, expand upon it, So yeah, I don't think that there can be enough of that or enough of us using our voice or supporting each other. I'm with you there.
For sure.
Big time.
It's needed for sure.
Yeah. So, I wanted to share with you, I haven't told you this yet, but I think it was maybe a week ago, you had shared one of your before and current, I don't want to say after, but current photos of you from when you were in, I believe, the thick of your addiction, and then you sober now. And, I'm going to get emotional because I actually sobbed when I saw and read it because I actually don't think I've ever said this out loud anywhere, but my mother is an addict, and my entire life has refused to get better and to heal. And so to see another woman like you, to see you, Jen, standing in your story and owning your story and standing in your truth and healing every day, it's an ongoing journey, right? And healing just took me, I was just taken aback. And, it meant so much to me to see another woman who is a mother doing that healing work. Because when you're the child of a mother who doesn't do that healing work, it's just devastating. So to see you standing in that truth and owning your story is incredible. So how has that been for you?
My mother is also in her addiction and was my whole life. So I feel what you're feeling. I completely do. It is very difficult to be. I'm torn a little bit because here I am, a woman who has recovered and is recovering, and I was homeless and eating from garbage cans and walking the streets in psychosis and the whole 9 yards for most of my life. and yet, and I have a lot of love for people who use drugs, and I know that there's a lot of pain there, either sometimes pain from childhood, and also, let's be real, just a life in addiction is a traumatic experience in itself. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of trauma that needs to be worked through. And so on the flip side, I have a mother that, amongst a lot of other issues, is in an addiction for opioids as well. And she just has never gained her footing. And that's very hard to grow up like that. And, I say I'm a motherless daughter because I am. Mm-hmm. She is alive, but she is not my mom. And that is a hard pill to swallow. But it is the truth. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important that people talk about that. I think it's important that we are supported in whatever it is we feel about that type of trauma. There is kind of this myth that all women are capable of loving their children the way they should be loved, and that is a lie. Mm. And I think that it makes it very scary to speak out, to say, I have detached from my mother. And it was the only way that I could heal, because she just is dangerous and abusive. Does that mean I don't love my mother? Absolutely not. I love her with my entire heart. And there's nothing in me that would not want, if she called me tomorrow and just acknowledged something and maybe just a little step, I would be there like that, Yeah. But until that day, and if that day ever happens, I have to protect myself and my children.
Exactly. I have been a motherless mother by choice since my oldest was born. So over 16 years ago, for the exact same reason. And what's interesting to me in hindsight is that as a daughter, I tolerated everything. Everything. I tolerated all of it. And the moment I had my own daughter, the fierce protectiveness kicked in, and I couldn't and wouldn't put her ever in the position to have to tolerate any of it. And looking back in hindsight, I realized that, I didn't give myself that own fierceness and protectiveness. I didn't know how, really, or it's your mother, like it's your mom, and you're willing to put up with almost anything to have them in your life. And then to become a mother yourself and raise children and not have the support of a mother is a whole other layer that you have to live with every single day. And so I think you're right. I think a lot of people have a hard time speaking about this, especially if our mothers are alive and we're living our lives day to day as motherless mothers. But I also know that when I do talk about it, and this is, I'm assuming your experience too, you can let me know, but I know when I do talk about it, it's almost like this collective, from other motherless mothers who are like, thank you, I feel seen and I feel heard. Is that your experience too?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I was going to tell you that. I remember the first time I shared in an open forum, on social media, about my mother wound. And I was very delicate and I was very afraid. And the floodgates opened of just women, either in the comments, mainly DMing me, thank you, because they're so afraid to acknowledge. It's very hurtful to acknowledge that your mother was not capable, willing, able, whatever it is, to see you, to love you, to hear you. It hurts. And then when you speak about it, most families, I'll speak for my own family, absolutely, I'm the black sheep. How dare I speak about our family? How dare I upset my mom? There's a lot of mental illness layers as well. Attempts at suicide, and my whole entire life. So it's like the blame is all on me, and it takes a lot of, I always tell people, I love the term and the phrase of speaking your truth. But it is so much more important to learn to sit with that truth first, because if you start speaking it before you have really sat with it, what the backlash is, it'll knock you over.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know about you, but being the black sheep, I like to call myself the white sheep, because I think we're really the light of our family. Like, it's like, if that's not gaslighting in itself, right? Like, you're the light, and they're like, but you're the black sheep. And it's like, no, wait, huh? But most of us who are that person in our family, we've always had to be the bigger person. Even as children, I remember growing up, and my mother and my aunts, they were young when I was born. And so I was like that much younger, almost like sister that they resented, because I got all the attention from, the grandparents, their parents. And so I grew up with that. And it was like a lot of just competition and pettiness. And I was a child who just wanted to have a big family and have fun and be loving and cook in the kitchen and listen to music. And just, I just craved that. And my grandmother always, when I go to her about just some issue, is like, well, you know what? They're just not capable. You have to be the bigger person. And you get to the point when you're an adult where you're like, you know what? Fuck that. Like, this is actually me being the bigger person now by telling you that you all need to deal with your shit. Like, I'm no longer going to be doing that for all of you. And the trickle effects of all of it, right? I see it in my relationship, not just with my relationship with my mother or my father or the maternal line in my family, but my siblings as well. Because I don't know, do you have siblings?
I have one brother.
Okay. Well, I'm the oldest of 6 kids. And so, and I'm not only the oldest of 6 kids, but I am the only parent. So I'm the only one with children who is decided before I even had children that I was going to break all these cycles for my children. So breaking all these cycles in a family where you have siblings, aunts, parents, grandparents, and then among your siblings, you're the only one with children and you're doing everything different. The backlash is real, Jen. You're not kidding. The backlash is real. And the level of boundaries, like, I know people say setting boundaries is a privilege, but for people like you and I, setting boundaries is survival.
Oh, yeah.
It's survival. It's how we survive. And we can't heal until we put those boundaries in place for us to even be able to survive and breathe, then work on the healing. Is any of that parallel for your story as well?
Oh, totally. Like I have one brother. He's also in his addiction. He lives with my parents to this day, and he's 40, I think now. My mom. I rarely call her my mom. It's interesting that I just did that. I usually call her mother. But she has Munchausen syndrome and Munchausen by proxy, which my brother. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I mean, not on a personal level, but yes, I know. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's very complicated. It's she wasn't diagnosed till I was in my 20s. So all this abuse went on our whole lives, and nobody, including abuse to herself. But my brother is more of her victim, and my brother still sleeps in the same bed as her.
Oh, wow.
And so he hates me. He hates me, and he has threatened to kill my family. And, that was the end. That was the last time I spoke to him 2 years ago. But, and then there's my dad. So the thing with my mom is that I've really had to work through that the most. That is the deepest wound for me. But just recently, I've had to really take a look at my dad's complacency in it all.
Yes.
And it's been hard because, I've kind of put him on I don't want to say a pedestal, but, I saw him as such a victim of hers as well. But, now that I am a mother, I feel how I feel about my children. Like, if anyone even spoke to my children sideways, I'm coming after you. and just how much I want my children to flourish in their own skin and all these things I feel. And I know I'm not the only mother to feel that way. Why did my parents not? Why did my dad just let my mom just torture us?
Mm-hmm.
And it all comes down to this ultimately, and I have a lot to work through on that still, and I probably always will, is that my family, generations and generations past, do not have any tools to survive being in their own skin at all.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's wrong, right. I could hash it out forever until I die, but it just stops there. They do not have the tools to survive themselves. So I do. And so I will do that for my children and my children's children and their children. And that's the magnitude of like breaking cycles. Is like, sometimes I just think about how I'm doing so great in our family, but I'll sit back and I'll go, holy shit. It's not just my family. It's my son's family and my daughter's family and their kids' family. And how amazing and powerful that is,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's huge. Complacency, I also call it just no effort. Just a complete lack of effort. When I let my dad know that my book was published and out in stores last year, he was like, what's the name of it? This had been my life for a decade. A decade. What's the name of my... I haven't talked to him since. And, and it's because it's just, you get to the point where you're just like, wow, I am putting out, kind of like when we talk about self-care, you put out and put out and put out and put out, but how much are you pouring back in? Is your cup empty? It's the same thing with our relationships and family. You're giving out all this energy, trying to, get them to give you the same energy in return. And it's a false expectation that just always leaves you disappointed. And so you get to the point where you're like, and you're going to be called everything, like, oh, you just don't care. Oh, you're keeping your children from us. Oh, you're doing this. Oh, you're doing that. And it's really like, no, I'm done. I'm just done. And my family, people who know me, when I reach the point of done, there's really almost no coming back from that. Because I probably have poured my heart and love and energy into you or this relationship for years and years and years and years and years. And when you're an incredibly loyal, loving person, at some point when you're not getting that back in return, you have to walk away or it will ruin you. It will deplete you and you will have nothing left. And like you said, we're mothers who are giving our children everything. Everything. The way my relationship is with my kids is so different than I ever saw modeled, right? Never saw that modeled. And the relationship between amongst my children as siblings is so different than I ever saw modeled as well. I grew up wanting to be so close to my siblings, but because the trickle down effect from like my mom and my dad and everyone, there was always that level of competition, assumptions, not believing in each other, because not believing in yourself. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. And I just look at my kids. So that was really important to me in raising my children, was cultivating their relationships, helping them work through their misunderstandings or their differences. And that is an all day, everyday job. And let me tell you what, with 6 kids, it is utterly exhausting, but I am so determined to help them have healthy relationships with themselves and with each other. And I'll tell my kids, like, look, you won't always see eye to eye. You won't all want to do the same thing. You won't always agree, but I gave you 5 other people to have your back for the rest of your life. And that is priceless and precious. And you need to treat it that way. And because that's what we wanted. That's what we wanted.
Right.
Like, you don't have to love everything I do, but can you have my back? Because I have yours. Even though I don't love everything you do, I got your back, And so when you grow up without having that in return from your mom, dad, sister, brother, whoever it is, and you want to break cycles, then you are doing everything in your power to help your children or those people in your life to have those skills, like you're talking about, to have those skills to break those cycles and to not even have to burden those cycles anymore,
Oh, right. That's the last thing I wanted is my children to suffer the way I did. And I think it's so unnecessary. I just think that it's so unnecessary that for children to suffer. there's just so much out there and information and people talking about it. It's like, let's just, if you're making mistakes, if you've caught yourself in bad cycles, it's okay. Let's snap it up. Let's get it back,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge, and you have 6 kids, so I bow to you. I have 2, and I am
Honey.
max.
It's all relative. Your 2 for you are probably just as hard as my 6 for me are. Like, it's all relative.
I am max.
Yeah. I hear you.
Max, but I almost didn't become a mother because I was terrified I would be a mom like my mom.
I think that's why I'm the only one of 6 that has children, I think. And like I told you earlier, I made the decision before I even had kids. I found myself at a fork in the road after my first year of college, and I realized I was going down a similar path as my mother, and I did not want that. And the other path was very unclear. It was barren. It was just this dirt road without any knowledge of how it would be, but it would be my road, And so at very young, at like 19, 20, I found myself at this fork in the road, and I decided to choose my own path and not follow the ancestral maternal line and path that I was headed down. And so by the time I became a mom, like I was already really, really determined, to change all these cycles. And what's interesting, you've mentioned how everyone's got an opinion. Every expert thinks they know everything. And it can be very overwhelming. You're just like, how do I do this? How do I parent different? How do I change these cycles? And what I always go back to is getting very still and remembering what it felt like to be that child. And what did I want? What did I need? I didn't need the bells and the whistles. I didn't need the new toys. I didn't need, any of this, any of it. All I wanted was the presence of my mother and my father. I just wanted them to be present. I wanted them to listen to me when I had a silly story. I wanted them to watch when I made up a dance with my sister. I wanted them, to be excited about the things I was excited about. I wanted them to support me, in the things that were, important to me at the time. And that's really all it is. Like, let's break it down to the basics, we like you said before we actually started recording, like, you wake up in the morning, you're like, I'm going to be a Pinterest mom today. And by noon, it's like chaos, right? It's like, right? And so we think that we need to be like these Pinterest moms and have everything perfect. But there's no such thing as that in real life anyways. We all have our Pinterest mom moments. But most of it is just real life chaos, and it's messy, but it's also beautiful. And as long as we're present for our kids and we're being honest with ourselves, we're being honest with them, we apologize when we mess up, we do better. Like, your children will recognize that and, oh my God, appreciate that. Like you said, if your mom called right now and was like, hey, Jen, I really realized I messed up with this, or I really miss you and I want to have a relationship with you. Oh my gosh, it'd be hard not to just melt into a puddle on the ground, right? Because we came from this person, like we share DNA, we share a whole maternal line with them. And it's one of the hardest things we ever have to do is to walk away from that, and so to remember that as a mom for our children, moving forward and breaking these cycles and being a motherless mother does not have to be complicated, and we don't have to look at every single expert. It's just leaning into our own inner child and asking what we needed and then giving that to our children. At least that's what I think. What do you think?
No, I totally agree. In fact, I've spent probably the last maybe 4 years really doing a lot of inner child healing work. Mm-hmm. And in doing that, and I talk a lot about I do inner child meditation, which nothing I do is fancy, so just bear with me. But I take a picture every morning. I take a picture of myself at about 5 years old. That's when, my molestation started, and just all, my mom was very suicidal and just all this stuff. And I hold this picture close to my heart, and I envision myself picking that little girl up off the floor and holding her and dancing with her in the sunshine and telling her she is love and light and none of that was her fault, and she is not bad, and that she is safe, and all these things I envision. I do this every morning. And what's happening, it's almost as if I have been raised by the woman of my heart. Things are starting to shift for me, and I'm not feeling so much as a woman who's wounded by her wounded mother. I'm feeling more like a woman who's been raised by a whole mother. It's starting to happen. Like, I guess reparenting, you'd call it. It actually is starting to happen. And as I nurture the little girl of my childhood the way that she never was, I learn how to nurture my own children, just like you said. It's so important, I think, that I could talk about inner child stuff all day, every day, because it has been the key to everything for me.
And did it feel silly to you at first? It's almost like it feels silly to do that, but I just recently started doing that myself, and I came across some photos of me as a kid, and I was like, oh my gosh, you were so cute. You were so cute, and you were so sweet and so loving, and just saw the world with definitely some rose-colored glasses. And just that alone, just looking at the photos and just remembering how sweet and loving I was, just kind of started opening up a gateway to want to connect with her more. And it feels a little silly, but like just looking at a photo of myself and writing a little poem to myself, or, if I wake up in the morning and I'm feeling really anxious, I'm like, what does young January need? What does teenager January need? And just getting back in touch with that. Like, it doesn't have to be complicated, or what did you say? It's not like all beautiful. Fancy. Yeah. Fancy doesn't work for me anyways, Jen. So I'm not, as you can see right now, I have no makeup on. I brushed my hair, but it's still wet. Like, I'm not a fancy person either. And I'm like, the more simple it is, the more accessible it is, I think. And so I have to keep things simple too. And so, yeah, it's just really simple. It's like, just like any journey of self-love and self-acceptance, it might feel silly, but just looking in the mirror and stopping whatever negative inner dialogue, or a lot of us have an inner dialogue that is our mothers or our grandmothers or our aunts or the media, news, other girls at school from a young age that we started comparing ourselves to. We have this audio track in our head. So just pausing that audio track and looking in the mirror and throwing a monkey wrench in it by being like, you are beautiful. You are lovely. You are loyal. Like, you're such a good friend. I'm just so proud of you. It throws a really good monkey wrench into that audio track we have. And the only way to change that audio track in our minds is just like those mixtapes in the 80s and early 90s, right? You had to re-record over it. You're like, okay, I'm no longer into New Kids on the Block, and I don't want anyone to know that I actually still secretly love them. So I'm going to re-record over it with Boys to Men or whatever, Salt and Pepper, and so like that re-recording over. And that's like, so to me, that inner child work is leaning in and remembering who we were and like what we needed, because our needs obviously were not met. Not all of them, at least, right? And so what those needs were, and just, kind of re-recording over, like you said, like reparenting. It's like a re-recording over like what we went through and how it felt, and making ourselves feel safe and loved again. It's really like a self-love journey of our inner child. Yeah,
it is. It's been huge for me, for sure. And it does feel silly. I think anything new feels silly, really.
True. That is true.
In recovery, my whole entire life is like new stuff. Everything's new. I'm always learning new stuff. And I think as you keep doing it, you start to get more excited. Like, I love hearing about something new. I'm like, ooh, a new book or a new theory or a new philosophy. I'm on it. Let's do it.
Yes.
Anything to be better or feel better, I'm down for sure.
Me too. You recently shared a quote on your Instagram. I'm going to read it. It was, stop telling women that they should have it all, do it all, be it all, and all by a certain age. It's not possible, and we're tired, so fuck off. I loved it, and I love that you ended it that way. Like, we're tired, so just enough, like fuck off, like we're done.
Yeah.
But isn't that the truth? Like we have all of our own healing to do, but then it's like society as a whole is like, you should be doing everything. You should be a mom and working. You should be working in the home and out of the home and parenting your kids. And don't be sexual, but be sexual. And, you know, make a lot of money, but don't make too much money. And be aggressive, but not too aggressive. It's like, you know, I don't know if you saw that video going around recently. I forgot which actress it was, but it was like this.
I did.
Yes, that monologue.
From
Sex and the City.
Right?
Yes. I can't remember her name. But that monologue about, you know, being a lady and I think, how old are you?
I'm 43.
I knew it. So I'm 41. And I think sometime between the age of 35 and 40, we get to this point that's in your quote. I just double liked it. I liked it again. But we get to, we get to this point where we're like, no, this is actually ridiculous and it's impossible. And you're just literally setting us up to feel like we are never enough. And this is why women are walking around feeling shameful, feeling like they're never enough, and like basically taking any breadcrumbs we can get of any approval from anyone. And it's why women are the worst to women. Like most of the judgment we get are not from men. It's from other women because we're all tired, we're all worn out, and we're all walking around with these cycles of shame.
I was just going to say that unfortunately most of this pressure is from other women.
Yeah.
And I know in my heart, because I've done a lot of healing work, that those women are not really feeling that way.
Yeah.
So, but why it is people insist on painting this picture of something that is not even possible, and other people, I mean, I have been the same way where I'm just like grabbing for crumbs, just for whatever I can take, whatever love someone's willing to give me, whatever attention, whatever, you know, pat on the back. And, you know, I'm fucking done. I just, maybe it's my age. And I love being in the 40s. My 40s are the freaking best so far.
Yes.
You know, I'm telling you, you get tired. I'm tired. I am too damn tired to try and compete with all that shenanigans, mute, block, delete.
Yes.
And just go where the love is. That's it.
That's right. And some days I just mute, block, delete myself. I'm like, I'm tired of you too. Like,
right.
You know, because we get in our own heads and in our own ways. And recently I've really, really reconnected with my teenager self, because teenage January literally gave no fucks and had fun and was spontaneous and was like caution to the wind, but, you know, within reason for her. Like, I'm not saying within reason for anyone else, and just was like, life is what it is, one day at a time, you know, today is all I'm promised, and just really had that, you know, take life by the balls and do what I want to do. And I could do anything. And then over the course of 20 years of, you know, having kids and being a motherless mother, joining and leaving the Mormon church, working through issues in my own marriage and relationship with my husband. It's like you just, like you said, you get so tired and so worn down, and you move so far away from, you know, your higher self that we are when we're younger. You know, when we're younger, we're our highest selves. And it's really just over the years that just gets beat up, pushed down, shamed, and everything. And I think by the time we get to around that 40 mark, we're like, what in the hell are we doing? And how much more time do I really have? So this is some bullshit. I'm calling out my own bullshit first. I shared recently, like, if I'm calling something out, it's because I called myself out first, right? Like calling out our own bullshit, you know, and really starting to lean into who we really are, and, you know, learning to love ourselves again, find our voice again. And I told you this morning, and not explain ourselves, right? Like, that's so easy to fall into, especially when we're using our voice, or we have a platform and we share something. Everybody immediately jumps on it from their own perspective, their own experiences, their own trauma, right? And so it's very easy for something to get way off track. And then we start explaining ourselves. But I stopped explaining myself because I learned through very, very hard experiences especially in my births, actually, that the moment I started explaining myself, I gave my power away. And that's what happens. And explaining yourself is not the same thing as sharing. If you want to share your experience, if you want to share your story, that's one thing. But when someone starts questioning you or they're putting their own projections on it and you start explaining it yourself, you're taking you're giving your power away and you're moving further and further away from your message and your truth.
So true. Yeah, it's still, that's about, and a lot of battles I will always battle,
Oh yeah.
And I think it goes back, I always wanted my family to hear me and to believe in me. Mm-hmm. And it just has carried on through my whole life with men. I am notorious for picking women friends that when I look back at it now, they were just like my mother.
Oh, wow.
Very hot, cold, very competitive. And I mean, it's just recently I've looked back and seen why all these friendships were so hard on me and and it's like, whoa, like so many similarities to my mom. And it all makes sense, and so I've spent so much wanting to get validation from men, from women, from, whoever. And so sometimes that still creeps in, I'll share something and I'm very kind as far as I leave things very open and for people to feel accepted no matter what phase they're in. I'm not very hardcore about drinking, using, I'm just very open and loving. So then I want it to be received well. And when it's not, then I start backpedaling, and then I start and then if I really backpedal, I'll even start second guessing myself. And that's when I'm like, wait a minute, where's this coming from? There's no reason to second guess myself. Yeah. I'm coming just from my heart. That's it.
Yeah. And how can that ever be a bad thing, right?
I didn't say people that own black cats are trash, and so everybody has a right who has a black cat to say, hey, bitch, what the heck, Yeah. I said, let's let people feel all their feelings.
Yeah.
I mean, whoa, sorry.
That's all I said.
I shouldn't have to explain myself, right? It's like, right. Hey, that should be the most loving thing you've freaking seen today on there, Just let people feel what they want to feel. The end.
Yeah. But what I have found is that some people literally cannot accept any kind of love. They just cannot. And so when you're opening yourself up on a platform, there's going to be so many different people coming from so many different experiences at us. What people don't understand though is that when you have to walk away from what's supposed to be one of the most important relationships in your life, you're a stranger on the internet. I don't have any problem shunning or blocking you. Right? I don't know who you think you are, but you posted another thing I want to share was, Alexa, cancel my subscription to every single relationship that requires me to sweep my true self under the rug in order to be accepted. There it is right there, right? I love that one.
I am kind of funny, right?
Yeah.
I am kind of funny.
You are funny, but it's so true. It's so true. And you just totally mind blown on speaking on how those friendships, those people were like your mother. I'm going to have to sit with that one the rest of the day when we're done here, because whoa, you just blew my mind with that one. I'm sure you blew a lot of people's minds with that one. That's huge.
For me, it actually is amazingly true. It is scary how much we can repeat that. And it's the same thing. There's a lot out there about daddies and daughters and the daddy syndrome.
Yes.
And women choose men like their daddies or whatever. Well, I'm sorry. This can go the same with mothers and daughters.
Yeah, I agree.
And we can choose friendships and men even that might, have similarities to our mothers and family dynamics that are the same as ours. We go to a familiar, and here we are begging again for another human being to love us.
Yeah.
It's and that could continue for the rest of our lives if we don't, take it back, take the power back.
That's so true. I've thought of that before too, how we talk about daughter, dad issues. But what about mother-daughter? Maybe because there's not a cool, trendy way of putting that. I don't know, but it's so relevant, and so many of us are living it.
It is huge. I mean, I'm not trying to dismiss the daddy-daughter issue,
Not at
but
all.
the mother and daughter thing, that's our very first friend, our first girlfriend. It's our mom. I idolized my mother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I idolized her and followed her around like a puppy.
Mm-hmm.
And she taught me whether, and, abusive ways, or she taught me how to be a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so, unfortunately, she taught me a lot of ways how to hate myself, but that relationship. And so just like how you said, when you had a daughter, you're like, hold up.
Mm-hmm.
So my first child's a boy. And I started drifting away from my family, but when I became pregnant with the daughter, not only am I a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, which really, I had a lot of internalized misogyny. I really did not like women. I did not like myself. So many issues I've had to work through. I mean, what is that joke? I have more issues than a newspaper stand. But I mean, girl, it's like a freaking encyclopedia of issues over here.
But look how aware you are. I just want to say, I just want to validate that for you. Your self-awareness is beautiful, especially when I know what it's like to have a mother who has no self-awareness. So I just want to, I'm sorry to interrupt, but your self-awareness is beautiful, Jen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So when I became pregnant with my daughter, I had worked on a lot of that, like, misogynistic views of myself, and I had to kind of drop the tough guy act, and so I really was able to enjoy that pregnancy, because nothing screams like feminine power more than being pregnant, right? I mean, yes. I couldn't pretend I was a gangster with my belly with my son, you know what I mean? And that's how I protected myself. I pushed you away and pushed you away. And inside I was begging people to stay, but I was so abrasive and so yucky, So when I was pregnant with my daughter, I was able to actually enjoy that. And when she was born, I remember looking at her face and thinking, there is no way that I am going to bleed all over you the way my mother bled all over me. And there's no way I'm going to let her bleed all over you either. Yeah. And that's when I'm done. This is ending, because I want to raise a daughter who hopefully is comfortable in her own skin as much as possible. And they're going to find so much shit out there on their own. I want them to have a home base where they get love and nurtured, because there's only so much stuff out there that I have no control over. Kids and bullshit, I'm sure, I cannot control everything, but I can make their home base a place of love and acceptance. And we don't keep any secrets in this house. We talk about everything. I apologize to my children. Some people think that's so weird. I'm like, I don't understand why. They're human beings.
I think it's weird. Perfect. I think it's weird people think that's weird.
You would be surprised, or maybe
I know.
Not.
I'm not surprised. I've seen it too. And I'm like, no, it's weird that you think that's weird to show your children that you're human, because like you said, we idolized our parents. And then let me tell you, when that bubble busted, whew, that was awful. Right. And it really did a disservice to us. I think that happened to a lot of us, especially in the 80s. Our parents just hid a lot. They were quiet. They just did their thing. We thought they were like perfect, had all the answers. And then that bubble was busted and we're like, what in the world? And then many of us become like teenagers and our whole world turns upside down, because we're like, wait, you're supposed to have all the answers, but you're the one causing all the problems. What just happened here? And I think you make a really good point that, and I was gonna touch on this too, is the beautiful thing is, because a lot of this is just so overwhelming and oh my goodness and daunting, but the beautiful thing is that when we have our own daughters, we know all this. And so we know that our daughters are looking to us and that we can be a strong but authentic presence for them, and that they can come to us. They can be their own person, but we will always be there for them. And that, we'll guide them, but we'll also let them be who they are. And I'll tell you, so how old is your daughter? She's two and a half. Okay. So my daughters are 16, 12, 10, and 5. My sons are almost 15 and just turned 9. And so my daughters are a little bit older, and it is, Jen, you have so much to look forward to. It is.
Really?
Yes. It is amazing. It's amazing. And people are like, oh my gosh, you've got so many teenagers. And I'm like, the teenagers are not what's hard on me. It's the 5-year-old,
Yeah.
The teenagers are amazing human beings. They're compassionate. They are aware of what's going on in the world. They're kind. They are so fun to talk to hang out with, to all of those things. And I remember when I was, I think 14, my mom she was always out. She was still married, but she was always out partying. And I remember one time just getting in a big argument with her because she'd come home drunk. My dad and I would have to carry her inside, all that kind of thing. And I remember one time arguing with her at 14 years old. And I'm like, I remember yelling at her, I just want you to be my friend. And she's like, I will never be your friend, and I never want to be your friend. And that broke my heart then, and it breaks my heart now, especially now that I have daughters that age, and I'm honored and delighted that they want to be my friend and want me to be their friend. So yeah, you have so much to look forward to because you're putting all this work into yourself right now, and in turn breaking all these cycles and putting all this loving work and, like you said, this safe space for your kids to be in. And when our kids are young and grow up in that, as they become teenagers, and yeah, we've gone through they each go through a hard year. Those hormones are so hard on them.
I remember.
Yeah, but we also remember that no one held space for us when we were going through it. Right? No one, no one held space for me going through that. And I'm pretty sure no one held space for you going through that. No. We get to hold space for our daughters and our sons when they go through that really tough year or 2 or 3, depending on, each kid is different. And we get to hold space for them. And I remember telling my oldest daughter when she was really struggling, and her and I have never really had confrontation or issues, but during that, there was a year or 2 there where it was really rough for her. And I remember telling her, listen, babe, I know this is really hard on you. This is your first time going through all this, but it's also my first time as your mom going through all this. So let's go through it together. And then she'd cry and I cry,
I love that.
So you have so much to look forward to because you're doing the work now, and it will be evident as your daughters get older. I promise.
Yeah, it's very, for me, I have to catch myself not projecting on how I was and how it was for me, that I'm like, oh God, trying to gear up for teenagehood because I know what it was like for me and how my kids are so great. My son is so empathetic and so kind. And he is just, I had people try previously tell me to toughen him up. And I remember I spent a couple months, to myself, kind of, contemplating, am I doing him a disservice? And by letting him be so gentle and I realized I will never try to change that boy ever. And I just made a decision in my own heart that I promised him to myself. He doesn't know I ever went through that, but that I will never try to change him. He is so beautiful. And just and he watches me, he's older, but he watches me. And I sometimes do sticky notes in my mirror, about, affirmations and I saw him, he wrote a sticky note to himself, I am good.
Oh my gosh.
And I know, he didn't tell me about it. I just happened to find it. And I just thought, that tells you our kids watch us. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter so much what we say. They watch what we're doing. And my kids are watching me not be perfect, but they're watching me walk through stuff and healing and speaking and sharing and crying and laughing. And I just hope they learn that all that's okay for them.
I love when my kids call me out on something. I'm like, ooh, I didn't see that. I didn't see that I was doing that. Or I didn't see that I was doing that again. And not in a mean way, just so I'm an Aquarius. I don't know if you're into astrology. But
a little bit.
Yeah, I'm an Aquarius, and which is probably not surprising. And my oldest daughter is a Virgo. So Aquarians, we're not the most level-headed. We're very like I said, my teenage self was my full Aquarian mode. Well, Virgos are a lot more level-headed. And so her and I are we just have this great yin and yang relationship. But so she'll tell me, she'll call me out on stuff and be like, you do realize, she's even said to me, you do realize that it's okay if you say no to us and we'll be okay. Because sometimes I go the opposite way of my parents, and I think so much about how my kids feel that sometimes I have a hard time setting ground rules and boundaries with them. Right. And so she'll call me out on it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you. You know, and I'll go to my kids, especially my teenagers, and I ask, like, what would you do in this situation? Because not like anything, you know, wild or out of proportion, but just how would you feel about this, or what would you do? Because as adults, we tend to overthink everything, and we care so much about what other people think. And we're like, well, this person, I might disappoint this person and I might upset this person. Whereas kids are like, well, no, they're very black and white sometimes. Like, actually, this is what you should do. And I love that about them. So I love the relation with my kids. And I love, like, I am definitely their parent and they're my children, but there is such this beautiful back and forth thread of respect and love. And people will ask me, like, why are your kids, you know, whatever, so compassionate or kind or respectful or whatever? And I'm like, because I treat them with kindness and compassion, and I respect them and I listen to them. Now, obviously that's not going to always work out that way. And, you know, there's puberty and there's, you know, mental health stuff and everything else. But to have that groundwork there helps you navigate whatever comes your way or whatever will come their way, you know, for you to be able to be there for them and them to turn to you.
Communication is so huge, right? I mean, I think about my childhood and I was lacking so much, and that probably has to be the thing that damaged the way I saw myself the most, because nobody ever communicated with me that my mother was mentally ill. Oh, wow. Nobody ever communicated to me that what she was telling me wasn't true, that it wasn't my fault, that, you know, I did not make her want to kill herself. No one ever communicated anything. We just shut up. It was the golden rule. You never speak about it. You just act like nothing happened. And I was left to just discern, like, go through all this stuff on my own in my little child's brain. And all I could come up with was I believed everything my mom said. So if she said it was my fault and I was bad, then I was, you know? And so I just think communication is so huge, and kids can process way more than people give them credit for, I think. You know, sure, I don't tell my son, you know, mommy used to do heroin. Right. Not yet. He's little. He's, you know, he doesn't understand that quite so much. Right. But he knows mommy used to drink alcohol, and he celebrates with us every year that I celebrate free from that. And I don't tell him alcohol is bad. I just say that it makes some people sick, and mommy's one of them. Yeah. Sick to him could be sick in his tummy. He doesn't know what sick is. Right. But he has that compassion, and sometimes we'll see people that are homeless, and I always share about, you know, that mommy was like that one time, please, you know, I want him to be compassionate for people. And he'll say, yeah, maybe they just drink too much alcohol. I say, yeah, maybe, you know. I mean, some people would look at me and say, I can't believe you tell your kids that. He already gets it anyways. He's already in school. They're talking about stuff. He watches YouTube, even on YouTube for kids, you know.
Well, not to mention when you're not honest with your children, and you can be honest, like you said, at their capacity of understanding, right? So, but if you're not honest with them, what do kids do? They make up their own story. And so a lot of times that's worse than if you're just honest with them and let them know, like, what's going on or why that may be. And I have found that to be true as well. Absolutely. My kids celebrate my sobriety with me too. It's really, really cool, you know, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a generational thing, Jen, because, like, so much you're saying is similar to, you know, very parallel to my own story and my own journey. And I know, like, our grandparents were that silent generation, our parents, baby boomers. And there was just like this complete disassociation. It's like they all were just disassociated from their reality, from themselves, from, you know, like you said, communicating. That didn't happen at all. The secrets, the lies, you know, and now I think our generation is like, F this, we're blowing the lid off, you know, and with social media, you really can't get away with that anymore anyways, you know, and so now we have this age of, like, you know, putting it all out there, you know, being honest, healing, resources. And it's not even like just the resources. It's connecting with other people like you that you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one. Like, I thought I was the only one that went through that. I thought I was the only one that had a mother like that. I thought I was the only one. And so the solidarity and validation we find in these spaces like social media, I think is just as healing and powerful as any resources. And this narrative that, well, your mom or your grandmother didn't have the resources you do, I call bullshit. I call bullshit, because if you do not want to repeat cycles, you will find a way. Or what about right now? Our mothers are still alive. So the same resources we have available to us, they have available to them as well. So that's a narrative that I call bullshit on, because, you know, we're doing all this work. We're finding the resources. We're using our voice. We're leaning in. We're turning our self-awareness way up. Sometimes probably a little too high. We need to give ourselves a little grace,
Right.
you know?
Sure.
And so, you know, we have all this present for ourselves to move forward and do better. And I think that's something that I really try to focus on, because it can be very just overwhelming when you're like, oh my gosh, like all this healing that needs to be done. And we see, because it's in us, we see it in others, right? So we have thousands of people, you know, following our social media pages, and we're just like, this is so overwhelming. There are so many people that need healing work. There's so much trauma. But I like to focus on the fact that if we're healing our own inner child stuff and we're breaking those cycles with our children, the trickle effect of that is enormous. You know, when you help one person, it exponentially becomes thousands of people over time. It just does. And so when you're helping yourself and you're helping your children, like you said earlier, that's helping their families and their families and their families, and it will just go on and on and on. When you share one of your, you know, your quotes, whether it's like boom in your face or it's funny or whatever it is, and it gets through to one person, that trickle effect will help thousands of people. So why it feels daunting and overwhelming and like, how, are we even putting a dent in this? We are. It just might take a few generations to see the magnitude of it.
Yeah, right. It's you know, like that compassion or fatigue or whatever. Yeah,
Yes. That's so real.
It can be a lot. I really, you know, my heart wants to help everybody, or, you know, lead them to, you know, to resources or other online communities, because that's the truth. You know, it blows my mind that there are people today, and breaks my heart, that there are people today that feel alone in anything.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, you could come at me with the most random wound, and I could tell you and direct you to an entire community of people that are healing from that exact wound.
Yes.
You know, and it just makes me, it's just, it blows my mind. There's people that are sitting right now feeling alone in a mother wound, or, you know, daddy syndrome, or, you know, Munchausen. I used to think nobody could understand Munchausen, what it was like growing up with a mom with Munchausen. And I was so wrong. There's a huge entire, I mean, there's documentaries, and like, I mean, you know, just Google it, you know,
or just listen to Eminem,
or listen to Eminem, right?
Yeah, not to make light of it, but
No,
you know,
right?
but laughter is medicine too, and sometimes the stuff gets so heavy that you just have to find a little bit of humor in there, but it's true. I mean,
I forgot about him.
Did you?
Yeah.
That's actually one of the first places I heard about it, was back 20 years ago when he was rapping about it, and I was like, what is that?
It's a serious freaking
thing.
If that's what he's on. Yeah. So it's just amazing. It just, you know, so I'm always so willing, and sometimes I overextend myself, and I'm learning the boundaries with that as well, that I just, you know, I do my best to respond to everybody, and some of it is heavy, you know, and it can be a lot. And I also do recognize that I'm not a therapist. I try to just direct. Some things are, you know, because I do talk about childhood sexual abuse a lot, and so I mean, I have had some heavy DMs that are someone is in danger at the time, and I can be very torn at what to do, you know. But yeah, we do our best, and I hope, and that's all we can hope for, is that, you know, maybe just that one person needed to see that day. And you know, I kind of take for granted, and I've kind of downplay that I always get replies like that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you? I
Mm-hmm.
always get a comments or DMs saying, "Think that today
Yes.
that is exactly what I needed to hear today."
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
always kind of just brush past that and think,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing any service, you know, I'm not making a dent, you know, but if I really look back at every single thing I've ever said, right?
Yeah.
So,
It's true.
I
It's
guess
true.
we are doing something.
In the last year, I made myself slow down when I get those messages. And I've told myself, January, take this in. Because it's so easy to take in the negative and like let that fester in us when all this love is coming our way. And we're just like, yeah. Almost like we still feel on some level we don't deserve that love and people seeing us, you know? And so that right there is another level of your own healing of like, wait, like my voice is good enough. And I really am helping people, and I need to accept that love and appreciation from people. People ask me all the time, like, how do you know what to say? Like, how did you know I needed to hear this today? And it's because it's something I needed to hear.
Exactly.
That's what we're doing. I don't want to say that's all we're doing because it's huge what we're doing. But I think there's a lot of us finding each other in this space, especially recently, where we might not have credentials. We might not be therapists or a PhD or this or that, but we're people with a lot of experience and a lot of leaning in, a lot of unbecoming, a lot of healing. And we're saying, hey, we know we aren't the only ones going through this. So we're going to use our voice to speak up about this. And then we connect with other people who are like, oh my gosh, I thought I was the only one. Thank you for making me not feel alone. Because when you go to an expert or someone with credentials in it, their job is not to get down on your level.
Right.
They're not, they don't get on your level to see you eye to eye, face to face, experience to experience, understanding to understanding. And so that's what we're doing. We're like, we're just like you, and we're doing our own healing, and we want to share as we go. This is like an as we go journaling documentary of our healing that we're choosing very bravely and very vulnerably to share as we go, because it's healing for us to share and to be heard and seen. And then it's healing for you, for us to share and to be heard and be seen. And I think that's really what we're doing. And so we may not, you know, like you said, you may not be a therapist, but you are a healer. You're healing yourself, you're breaking cycles for your children, and you're sharing that work, which is helping others find their own healing as well. That's powerful shit. That's powerful.
Yeah, it's true. You have to, it's just like the cycle thing I was talking about, how sometimes I just sit back and like really allow myself to honor that magnitude, because I'm very quick to just, you know, I need to do something more, and it's on to the next thing, and I'm not enough, and and it's like, wait, I need to sit back and go, okay, wait a minute. It's okay to honor myself.
Yes.
It's okay to honor this work. It's okay to honor that I have love today and people are there for me. You know, that's a very foreign feeling for me, to have people actually genuinely care about me and care about what I have to say. And you know, that's very foreign for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I understand that. I understand that greatly, actually. It's not only a foreign feeling, but you're just like, am I comfortable with this?
Yeah.
You know, something that I deal with is feeling like I've said everything I can say. Like, and everybody's saying it anyways. So why am I still showing up in this space? Why am I still, it's all out there already, or you can go back in my feed. And then what happens is I hit another layer of my own healing, and I'm like, oh, I got more to say.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh,
yeah.
Every time. Yeah.
You know,
I'll do that too, where I'm like, I don't have shit to say on here.
Yeah.
I'll be sitting in front of the phone, like, in front of the screen. I literally just have nothing to say. But then it's like right at that valley, something breaks open. All of a sudden it's coming. I got stuff I want to talk about.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. Or if I just take like 24 to 72 hours and kind of pull away from everybody else's voices and feeds and posts, I find my voice again and my healing again. It doesn't take very long. You know, it's just like, let me just step back for a day or two or three. And then I'm like, oh, there you are. There it
Yeah.
is. Where are we at? Where are we at in our healing, our work, our journey? What do we want to share? What discussion do I want to have? Because it's so wonderful when, you have something in your mind. Like recently, I was really just contemplating that space in between diet culture and body positivity. And like, that's a really hard conversation to navigate. But to be able to get on, this free platform and do a post and be like, hey, anybody else think about this? Can we discuss this? And is it just me, or has anyone else thought of this too? It's so great. And then it opens up more thinking and knowledge and doorways. So, I think all this is really heightened right now too, with everything that the world's going through at the moment. It's all very heightened. And yesterday I was so frustrated because I don't know about you, but I get on let's say Instagram in my feed, and half the people are like, take advantage of this break. And I do break in quotes because I don't know about you, this does not feel like a break, at all. It has completely affected our businesses, our livelihood, everything. But so everyone's like, take advantage, write the book and do this and get in shape and work out. And I'm like, what the heck? And it's like all this pressure to step up and do something amazing right now. And then the other half of the people are like, this is not a break. Like this is a hardship that we're going through right now, and you don't have to accomplish anything. And so I almost feel that way in my own head, battling back and forth. Every morning I wake up like this pressure that I don't know if I'm putting it on myself or I'm picking up on it from others, but you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do that. And the other part of me is like, you're showing up for your kids. You're alive, you're sober, you have a roof over your head still. Because I've been homeless too. I know what that feels like. You have a roof over your head. You have food in the pantry. Like, sit on your patio in the sunshine and just have conversation with your family. And that's it. Like, you don't owe anyone else anything. And so I've kind of gone back. But then when I do that, it's like, am I beating myself up? Or am I just letting myself enjoy it? And I think that a lot of us go through that. We're just all feeling it heightened right now, even though we go through it regularly. So there needs, I don't know, I feel like I'm in this space of just giving myself permission to do whatever feels right to me each day, hour by hour. Like leaning back into myself. Anytime I start feeling really confused by everything, whether it's healing, inner child work, pandemic, like, whatever, should I go back to school? Should I not? Whatever it is, it always comes back to leaning back into you, your inner selves, and what do I need right now? What do I want right now? Not what the internet says, not what the news says, not what even my husband says, not what my mom says or my aunt says. What do I need and what do I want right now? And when we do that, we're being our authentic selves. And we're also going to feel, hopefully, a little bit more grounded and happier. And that's better for everyone. That's better for our kids. That's better for us. And I just think that that's just something I want people to take away from this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I definitely, I saw a lot. I mean, I have muted most of them.
Yeah, I did yesterday. I muted everyone.
But I really, at first I was flooded with, and this kind of was most people's stances at first was like, it's time for the earth to heal.
Yeah.
And we're all going to get introspective and take bubble baths and oils. Yeah. And I'm like, I got fucking kids, man. Yeah. I haven't taken a bath since, 2013. But I mean, let's be real. If I take a bath, my kids are in there.
Yeah.
And, they're coming in. I got a bath bomb. They're definitely coming in,
Oh, especially if there's glitter involved.
If there's good smellies and mommy specials, that's what they call it, mommy specials.
Oh, I love that.
If there's mommy specials, which means bath bombs, they're in.
Yeah.
I got naked butts everywhere. Yeah. So there's not a lot of time for me to do all that all this, stuff. So I've been struggling since day one of just being like, okay, I no longer have the system I had, the little bit of time when my son was at school, my writing, it's gone. So I muted a lot of those people for now, and we may become friends again. But right now, I just need people to just be like either funny or
Yes.
real about how they're
Yes.
feeling,
Mm-hmm.
or like, hey, you know what? I had a really great, grateful moment today, and tomorrow maybe they're pulling their hair out. As long as they're just being real and like
Authentic.
letting
Yeah.
me know and reassure that everything's okay. Whatever you're feeling, that's like my mantra right now. It's everything you're feeling is okay.
Yeah.
And I have happy moments where I'm watching my kids and I feel so grateful we're in our home and we have food and we have Netflix and there's like I have no stress. Everything's great and loving. And then I have moments where I'm like, want to go out. I just want to get out and I'm stressed and I'm not accomplished, as long as we're honest about how we don't, I lived with so much shame for so long that if I even smell shaming, I'm out.
Yeah.
I don't even want to smell it.
Me too.
Not even a fucking whiff of it.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Not even a whiff of it.
Not even a whiff of shaming.
That's right.
No, I don't care what it is. I'm out. I cannot.
Because it accomplishes nothing. Have we ever helped anyone or changed anyone's mind by shaming them? No.
Nothing.
Never.
Nothing. Yeah. So anything that kind of just reeks of shaming other people and how they're processing.
Yeah. You can't get out of there quick enough. Right.
Yeah. I'm thinking so fast.
Yeah. I even blocked some people that, I mean, they don't even follow me or anything, but it was like some big accounts and there's stuff they're sharing right now. It's like, I don't need the negativity. And I'm not talking about reality. I'm not talking about putting my head in the sand. I'm talking about taking it so far that you're calling out fear mongering, but you're doing the same thing on the other side. So I don't need any of the extreme stuff right now. No one needs that right now. Like we all, and I feel this way on a regular basis. And I know you do too. Like you don't want to see the shaming anytime, but everything's heightened right now. Everything's so heightened right now that it's definitely reminded me of where my boundaries are and what I'm about and what I'm okay with and what I'm not okay with. And I think that's probably a good thing. Maybe a little silver lining in there, getting us all kind of really back to our own internal basics, So, okay. I have a question for those that are listening and have been hearing us talk about some pretty heavy stuff, what are maybe just some ideas or resources or maybe little moments of clarity that you've had in moving forward as a motherless mother?
Let's see. So I obviously am a big reader, I mean, I really have done a lot. I'm going to be honest. I've done a lot just tuning into myself. It's very difficult for me to blueprint out.
Yeah. Same.
Because I've really my healing has looked a lot like me crying on the floor and snot and just hugging myself.
Yes.
And allowing myself to grieve. And I think that is just, I really don't know how to explain that. And I know that, it's so important to just feel it all.
The rawness, and being raw.
Just the rawness, man. And I still have moments and there are some mornings I'll wake up and I feel it in the lump in my throat. And I'll just, and instead of fighting that, I just let it out.
Yeah.
My heart is so broken sometimes and that's okay. Don't suppress it.
Go ahead. So don't suppress it. Don't suppress it.
I'm telling you, it's just like what I spoke today about anger on social media, but anything. I mean, we should all be quite aware now what happens when a person suppresses their emotions into a pit of silence.
Right.
What happens to that person? It destroys us.
Yeah.
It destroys anything possible it destroys all the beauty, everything around you, really. There is a lot of mother wound groups that I have really loved. I also have had to, sometimes they get a little bit too much for me and I back off a little bit because it's kind of like a constant. But I think there's, healing has so many different phases, and there was a few years where I let my family have it. I called them on everything. It did nothing. but it was part of my healing. It was part of I had no voice for so long,
Right.
and did nothing, and just swallowed it all and internalized it all and let them abuse me, that when I finally stood up, I didn't let them say anything. I mean, I was on it. And it was part of the process. It did nothing for the situation.
But it did something for you because you used your voice unapologetically, finally.
I did.
Yeah.
And I think some of those mother wound groups, that's kind of where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
It's about like realizing that, hey, all these things were abuse. It's okay to say it was abuse. You know, I think we fight that. We're so nervous. We're so scared to see it as abuse. We're scared to definitely say it as abuse, you know? So I just think if you just follow your heart and really, you know, there is a time for anger, and there is a time for you to really call it out and look at it and be like, you know what, this was messed up.
Yeah.
This hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and especially when you go so many years of you know, that codependency and the scapegoat, and it's so awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is still, you know, a great resource for me. You know, I think Steffi Wagner still does one.
Okay. You know, a couple things. First is that Ange Gallo is the one that taught me that anger isn't bad. It's what we do with it. So alchemize it into action.
Right.
So anger doesn't have to be a bad thing, but if you're angry and suppressing everything, then you're going to go down a rabbit hole. But if you're angry and you are leaning in, healing, using your voice, taking action. That's what Birth Without Fear was when I started Birth Without Fear and Take Back Postpartum. I was so angry. I was so angry about those particular things that I alchemized it into action and started movements. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful things can come from anger if you alchemize it into action, you know? So there's that. The other thing for me is I'm kind of with you, where it's like listening to my own voice is the most powerful thing I can do. I know the term empath is thrown around a lot now, just like the word triggered. And so, you know, but being like truly and largely an empathic person, I can't be part of groups like that. I absolutely cannot. I will take it on as my own. One of the main reasons I started like a fee thing was many reasons. I mean, valuing my time and my knowledge and whatever, but it was mostly because of how much I was taking in, because people would just DM me and wouldn't even ask me, hey, are you in the space for me to unload on you right now? Right. They just unload. And so you go and check it and it's just there. And so that has cut down since I put up my fees, which was one of the main reasons I did it, because it's almost impossible for me not to take on somebody else's stuff. Like I have to put up I have to actually say to myself sometimes, January, put up a border around you right now. This is not yours to take in. Don't take it in. Like I have to actually physically do it. So I can't be part of those kind of groups. And so I don't seek out sometimes those kind of things. I think they're great resources. Don't get me wrong. I think it's wonderful.
Right.
I mean, there's people that are in all sorts of situations. Like you might be a stepmom in a blended family and nobody around you is in a blended family. So they don't understand the dynamics and the struggles that you have. And so you join a group on Facebook and it's like, oh, thank goodness, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I can't be part of those. So I'm a lot like you, where it's like, let me lay on my closet floor, get in the fetal position, hug myself, bawl my ever-loving eyes out, give myself permission to feel sorry for myself for a few minutes, and how unfair this is. I have sat in my closet and literally said out loud, January, I validate you. Because I've gone through situations, even just a few years ago, where no one would validate me, including my husband. And so I validate you. I hear you. And it was just like this relief. So yeah, constantly coming back to ourselves and, you know, what it feels like for us and what we need and what we want, I think is a really, really big and good tip. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah. and writing.
Okay.
I am a writer, but you don't have to be a writer to benefit from pen and paper. I love pen and paper writing.
Yeah.
I think it is so, and whether you need journal prompts or whatever, or you just write whatever or draw, number one, it gives you a pause.
Yeah.
Like, it gives me a pause. I'll speak for myself. It gives me a pause. And so if I'm especially extra anxious, or, like my body's, I'm starting to get that fight or flight. I mean, I still have CPTSD, so sometimes things come up. If I sit and write a paragraph, or whatever, I get my feelings out, but it's also that pause. And in that pause, I can kind of recalibrate a little bit. I love writing. I always suggest to people to please write in some manner.
Yeah.
I just think it's so good, and it just gets it out. And when you're in your own handwriting, I don't know what that is. I know there's psychology behind that.
Yeah, it's really cathartic.
I don't know it.
Right. But it's there.
I know there is. So.
Yeah. Okay, I have a question for you, totally on a technical side. Do you ever, your writing can't be fast enough for your thoughts? Like, what do you do? Yeah. Does it just get messy?
Yeah, I'm messy.
Yeah, really messy.
So I'm super messy. Yeah. First of all, I can't type for shit. So I can't, I can't look at the screen and
right.
I'm like looking at the, keyboard. Yeah. So I must write with my pen and paper for one, because I won't be able ever to get it out in time. But yeah, I'm just messy.
Yeah. Sometimes
it's just me.
Exactly. Sometimes when my hand can't keep up with my brain, I pull out my phone and open up a new note and I just voice it.
Oh.
Do you ever do that? Yeah. So I have notes where I'll just voice it and it just types it out for me, because it's like, so I'm actually more of a speaker than a writer. So for me, I am, I'm a storyteller. When I got into speaking 7 years ago, I had never spoken publicly before, but I'm a storyteller. And so, just getting up and speaking and storytelling is my thing. And so my hand doesn't always want to keep up. So I end up getting on my notepad on my phone and I speak it and it just types it for me. So maybe that'll help one person listening.
Right, because I am not a speaker.
Yeah.
I literally...
my husband's a writer. My husband's a writer.
I'm a writer. I love writing. Writing and speaking are two entirely different things.
They are. They
really are. Now, conversation I can have.
Yeah.
If we could be in front of 1 million people right now, and I would be flowing normal.
Because it's a conversation.
Put me up there by myself and expect me to go from point A to point Z. Oh, no.
Yeah. The first time I ever spoke, I was trying to write out a talk, and I'm like, how do people memorize talks? And so I literally tore the paper up and threw it away, and I just got up and just spoke. It's all, if it's in your mind and in your heart, then it can come out. But yeah, that's not for everyone whatsoever. So, but speaking of writing, you wrote a book. Can you tell me a little bit about your book?
I did write a book. So it's called Shape of a Woman, by Jen Elizabeth. And it's basically, it's just an overview kind of my life story a little bit. It's not an addiction memoir. It's like an overall view just about how I was born and shaped a certain way, but I am not bound to how I have been shaped. And how these things, yes, they did devastate the flow from when a girl turns into a woman. But I have lit all that on fire and burned it and taken what's valuable, because a lot of what the lessons I've learned are from my pain, and rebuilt myself to be the woman I am today, and that it's possible for everybody. So that's, I have more plans. It's kind of like the bubble bath thing. I have plans on a second book right now.
Yeah.
Now, when I'll have time to actually write it, but it will be letters to my inner child, and about inner child healing, not from a psychologist or psychiatrist perspective, but from a woman who's healing's perspective. And intermittently, there'll be letters to Dear Jenny, because it was very difficult for me to even say the name Jenny until about a year ago.
Wow.
I hated my name. It just carried so much shame still. Even just, that was the last kind of part for me, was just my name, Jenny, because, I say it's the name my mother never said. And it's the name my abuser said too often. And I just had a real hard time with the name Jenny. And so it's very important in my healing to acknowledge Jenny and to love Jenny.
It's like taking ownership of that again. Like, that's not yours to have ownership over. That's not your abuser's right to have ownership over. So taking that ownership back, taking your power back. Yeah. Taking your power back. I think it's important to note that, especially as women, that we are allowed to evolve and transform and change and shed our skin and burn everything to the fucking ground and then rebuild ourselves in the image we see for ourselves, not the world, not society, not abusers, not mothers, no one else, how we see it. And then in turn, as mothers ourselves, we want to be able to give our children the space to just do that from the beginning, where they don't have to burn it to the ground later. They get to do it from the beginning and hold that space for them so that they can, as they navigate their journeys through childhood and teenagers and young adults, that they get to transform and shape and reshape, and we allow them to. We don't hold them in boxes. We were always put in boxes, like really confining boxes. And it's like we had to literally, like you said, we had to burn it or punch through it. I always say, like, I had to punch through, like throat punch through, these boxes I was put in. And I don't know about you, but anytime anyone asks me to like share a little bit about myself, which I know I made you do, but it's really, really hard because there's so many layers. I think there's so many layers to us. Like that I can't just be put into some boxes maybe, but other, like not many, because like I don't want to be confined into one thing. I don't like labeling myself any of that, because what I might identify with this year, I might not identify with next year, or what I identified with yesterday, I don't identify with today. And that's beautiful. That kind of transforming is beautiful. And it's when we get stuck in a label or stuck in our ways, that's where that conflict happens, not with ourselves, but also with each other, I think.
So true.
So is there anything else that you would want to share with those listening, either about any of the topics we talked about or any of the resources you have, or where people can find you?
I guess we've talked about everything, but anybody can find me. I'm all across all social media as Resurrektion with a K _of_me. And yeah, I mean, I have, again, like you said, there's not a box. I do have a big, addiction story, but I do not talk about that every day.
Right.
I just really share what's on my heart every day. Mm-hmm. And I'm always changing. And so sometimes I'm really gung-ho to share about harm reduction. And that's what I share about. And sometimes I'm really struggling with my, the sexual abuse or, whatever it is, I just share about it. And so I don't hold anything back. I'm just going to, there's my disclaimer, is that I really don't. And I think it's important that we find spaces where we don't feel like we have to.
Yeah.
And, I also, I do share some of my, the picture you saw of me, when I was homeless and stuff. And I think my main message is that no matter where you come from, no matter what you've done, mistakes you've made, what's been done to you, whatever it is, we can rise from all that. And we can actually become even stronger because of all that. Like, I would not change anything that's ever happened in my life up to this point, because it shaped me to be who I am today. And today I love who I am.
Same. I thought that when you were talking earlier, and I was going to ask you that actually. So I'm glad that you said that, because same, I wouldn't want to relive through a lot of the stuff I've been through. No doubt. No doubt. But I wouldn't change anything either, because it's made me a more compassionate, humble human being. And that's what I want. That's who I want to be. So I love that you hold space for that. I love that you hold space for acceptance and hope. When I read your most recent post where you shared the side-by-side photos, I just, like I told you, I cried, but it was just so refreshing to see someone say that no matter what someone's gone through or what addictions or what struggles they go through, that there's always hope for healing and hope for, compassion and understanding. And I just love that. So thank you. Thank you for being that person. I love that we talked about motherless mothering today. This is something that's always on my mind. It's actually the first time I've opened up as much as I have opened up about it today. I've shared some things today I never have. And part of that is because of you. So thank you for just holding space for me and making this a safe space and safe conversation. It's just been a beautiful conversation, and I appreciate it a lot.
I appreciate it too. It's been awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
It's so good.
It's so good. And it's vulnerable, but it's also like, oh, yes. Thank you. Yeah. Not the only one. Thank you. So, well, we will put in the show notes everywhere you can find Jen and her book and her resources and social media. And again, Jen, just thank you so much for being on and for sharing your story and your message and your wisdom.
Thank you for having me on, and I'm one of your biggest fangirls.
No, I did not, but I did not know that. But let me assure you that the feeling's mutual, and I'm one of your fangirls too. So
every time you post something, my head's shaking so much. I got whiplash. I'm like, yeah, girl. I'm seriously. I'm like, oh yeah, bring it, sister, bring it.
Well, thank you. I'll keep bringing it then. Bring it,
baby. Don't ever stop.
All right. Well, until next time, y'all. Love ya.
Love ya.